Today marks the 5th anniversary of my relationship with Emily, and I spent the entire day decorating our home, preparing to propose to her. However, I couldn't reach her by phone. She had promised to come home early when she left this morning. Grabbing my car keys, I dialed her number again while driving to her workplace. Emily is a typical workaholic, so much so that even a year ago, when she was undergoing a kidney transplant due to renal failure, she was still preoccupied with her work. I had long grown accustomed to her daily routine of shuttling between home and the research institute.
She must be at the institute still.
Just as I arrived at the institute's entrance, Emily finally answered her phone.
What's up? I'm very busy.
Hearing her emotionless tone, I felt a pang of sadness. She didn't used to be like this. I adjusted my emotions and spoke softly.
Emily, today is our anniversary. We agreed to spend it together. You.
Before I could finish, Emily interrupted me.
David, don't you understand the nature of my work? If I waste even a little time, our team's drug development will be delayed by a day. How can you be so irresponsible?
Yes, my girlfriend Emily is a pharmaceutical researcher. Listening to the busy tone on the other end of the line, I felt a bit helpless, sitting in the car and looking up at the still-lit building with a sense of frustration. I shouldn't have rushed her. What difference would it make to propose a little later? After all, we've been together for so many years. Under the dim streetlight, I saw an old man selling flowers by the roadside. It was almost 11 o'clock, and he still had a bunch of sunflowers left. Judging from Emily's words, she might be busy for a while longer. I got out of the car and walked towards the old man. When I returned with the flowers, I saw Emily coming out of the building with John, her senior from university and first love. They hugged for 3 minutes before noticing me and slowly pulling apart. Before I could ask what they were doing, Emily frowned at me.
Why are you here? Is this so-called anniversary that important? And what about the flowers in your hand? Do you think a bouquet can fill your stomach or cure an illness? You're almost 30, and all you think about is romance. Do you have any sense of responsibility?
This was the second time today she accused me of being irresponsible. With such a heavy accusation, I instinctively wanted to explain the origin of the flowers. But Emily clearly didn't give me the chance.
Go home first. John and I haven't eaten yet.
Watching Emily walk towards John's car, I touched the ring in my pocket and put it back.
Let me treat you to dinner.
I admitted, my tone sounding somewhat humble. I had a feeling that Emily might not come home tonight.
Why would you come along? Can you even understand what we're discussing? I'll be back after dinner. Even though we're a couple, please don't follow me around all the time. Instead, think about how you can contribute to society.
With that, Emily got into John's car, which sped away without a moment's pause. I returned home in a daze and spent the night alone in the living room, filled with flowers and balloons, staring at the cake. Emily indeed broke her promise, not for the first time. In those moments of darkness, I missed the old Emily. Emily and David were neighbors since childhood. Their families were close, and they often joked about them getting married when they grew up. Though it was a joke to the elders, David knew he genuinely liked Emily for 12 whole years.
Young Emily, like now, had a strong sense of social responsibility.
As a child, David was often sickly and became a target for bullies because he couldn't join in on activities like fishing or climbing trees. During those times, the petite Emily would always stand up for him, explaining and reasoning with the other kids. When reasoning failed, she would take action.
It was then that I silently fell in love with her.
Emily decided to become a researcher in high school and never wavered from that goal. The only thing that changed was her attitude towards David. In high school, she was always busy studying and often skipped meals. David's grades were average, and he spent his time bringing her various nutritious meals.
You lack ambition.
She would scold me for lacking ambition, but would also help me with my studies with a stern face.
After high school, she got into her dream school and major. Thanks to her persistent tutoring, David also got into a decent school in the same university town. Despite being in different universities, they still saw each other frequently. Until she introduced John to David.
John was a year ahead of us and Emily's direct senior. He was highly skilled and often assisted in the lab, helping juniors with experiments. As they spent more time together, Emily and John grew close. Eventually, they started dating.
Though it hurt, David never asked Emily out for a meal again. When Emily got drunk at a bar, David was the one who picked her up. It was her first and last time at a bar. John had gone abroad for further studies without even breaking up with her in person. It was the first time David saw the composed Emily cry so heartbreakingly in front of him.
I hated John for treating her that way, but a dark corner of my heart wondered if I had another chance.
After that day, Emily and David resumed their regular meals together. She quickly moved on, as if nothing had happened, fully immersing herself in her research. After graduating, David confessed to Emily for the 5th time, and she agreed to be his girlfriend. That was the happiest day of his life. Emily held his hand and posted it on social media, even taking him home. Their families were delighted, joking that they always knew they would end up together. They spent 3 happy years with everyone's blessings. In the 4th year, Emily fainted at the research institute and was diagnosed with kidney failure. The best treatment was a kidney transplant. Neither her parents nor David's were a match. Lying in the hospital bed, Emily, who was still working on her data, finally put down her computer.
David, you've always taken care of me. When I'm gone, I hope you won't be too sad. Find someone who truly loves you and live a happy life. Forget about me.
With tears in his eyes, David activated a system he had never used before, asking it to transfer his kidney to Emily. The system agreed and even ensured Emily's recovery. It told him it could only help him for free once. Any future requests would come at a cost. It asked him to consider carefully whether to use this opportunity.
I thought, as long as Emily was healthy, that was my greatest wish. I didn't foresee needing its help again.
After Emily recovered, she saw David's pale face, still weak from the surgery, and hugged him tightly, crying for the 2nd time in front of him. She promised to love him forever. David didn't know how long forever was, but Emily's forever lasted only a little over a year. Despite his reluctance to admit it, Emily no longer loved him. The next evening, Emily came home. After 5 years of dating, both their families had long assumed they would end up together. David's parents even bought a house in the neighborhood closest to the research institute, under Emily's name, as their future home. Although David's childhood health issues had mostly been resolved, losing a kidney meant he was no longer as strong as before. People can share joy but not hardship. That's human nature, especially in matters of the heart, which are inherently uncertain. David had no reason to blame Emily for her change of heart. After packing his things, he wanted to say a proper goodbye to Emily, even though it wasn't like a divorce involving shared interests.
David, what do you mean by this? Just because I didn't come back last night to accept your proposal, you want to force me into marriage by leaving?
Seeing the suitcase by the entrance and the obviously decorated house, it wasn't unreasonable for Emily to think this way. But did she already know David planned to propose last night? She probably did. Living under the same roof, she must have noticed him buying materials and the ring, and planning with friends late into the night. One of them even let it slip in front of her. She must have known. Yet she still chose not to come back. Or maybe she deliberately didn't come back.
So if I force you into marriage, would you agree?
No, I won't let anyone control me.
Emily, let's break up. This isn't a threat.
The prepared farewell words seemed unnecessary now. Standing up, David placed the keys on the table and walked towards the entrance.
David, you've changed. We're past the age of romantic love. Can you be more practical? Does that piece of paper really matter so much to you? Without it, would our relationship change?
David didn't answer Emily's question, just recalled his brief encounter with John at the Research Institute entrance last night. It was the first time he'd seen John since he returned from abroad. In that brief moment, he realized Emily no longer loved him. Or perhaps, she never did.
Emily, do you know what you're like in front of John?
Even from a few meters away, under the dim streetlights, David could see the love in Emily's sparkling eyes. But that look wasn't directed at him. It never had been. It was always for John. In the 3 minutes they hugged, the love and tenderness Emily exuded were things he had never received in 5 years. David thought Emily might be naturally reserved in love. But she did have moments of intense affection. John returned 2 years ago, around the time Emily was diagnosed with a serious illness. David didn't know how she contacted John, but she recommended him to her research institute to take her place. Emily had told David this when she made the decision. At that time, his mind was only on her illness, not on anyone else. After Emily recovered, John continued working there, and they spent a lot of time together as colleagues. David didn't want to speculate, but Emily's attitude towards him changed after they started working on the same project. He had been reluctant to admit it, but after last night, he was sure of his suspicions.
David, you're being unreasonable.
Call it unreasonable if you want. Don't overwork yourself like before. You only have so many kidneys.
With that, David reached for his suitcase but couldn't move it. Looking back, he saw Emily holding it down.
Don't go, David, don't go.
I don't understand. Isn't this the outcome she always wanted?
David, I admit, I've neglected your feelings these past 2 years. You know me, my heart is only for you and my work. Especially the year I was ill, I fell behind on so much work. I had to catch up to stay on track. If I've been too focused on work, I'll change that. Please don't leave.
David gently pried Emily's hand away. She still didn't understand why he had given up.
Is it because of Michael? There's really nothing between us. After all these years, I don't have those feelings for him anymore. I recommended him to our company because I didn't want to lose talent. There's no other reason. You misunderstood yesterday too. We really didn't do anything, just had dinner, and then I went back to the lab. I admit, I'm a bit scared of marriage right now. But it's not because I don't love you. I just think we should focus on our work while we have the energy to contribute more to society. Isn't that good? Give me some time to adjust. I'll give you a satisfactory answer. Please don't leave me.
Emily kept talking, her eyes filled with panic and a hint of tears. David hesitated. He really loved Emily. After a sleepless night and excessive worry, his already frail body gave out during their argument. When he woke up again, it was almost dawn. Emily was sitting by the bed, holding his hand, looking drowsy. She had a ring on her finger, the one he had left on the bedside table. David moved slightly, and Emily instantly woke up, turning on the light. He saw the red veins in her eyes.
David, are you feeling better? Do you need to go to the hospital? I shouldn't have agreed to the kidney transplant, causing your health to be so poor now. It's all my fault.
The concern in Emily's eyes was genuine. Maybe she did love him?
I took a week off from work. I'll stay home and take care of you. Tomorrow, let's invite our parents over for dinner. It's been a long time since I've seen them.
Emily kept talking, and David's resolve wavered even more.
David, let's not break up, okay?
Okay.
During the week Emily took off, she turned off her computer and even her phone, dedicating herself entirely to him. When their parents came over for dinner, they subtly hinted that they were old enough to consider marriage. Emily held David's hand, showing off the ring.
We're already planning it, right? Emily looked at David with a tenderness that reminded him of the Emily who used to stand up for him.
After their parents left happily, Emily packed their bags and only told David they were going on a trip once they were in the car. The destination was a place David had mentioned wanting to visit a year ago. Emily had planned everything perfectly. They spent 3 days there, undisturbed, and it was the happiest time of David's 28 years. If he hadn't seen the messages between her and John on her phone, he might have continued to believe that. On the last day of their trip, Emily checked her work messages while David packed their bags. The food delivery arrived, and she reached for it while still looking at her phone. She missed, spilling soup all over her white dress. While she went to change in the bathroom, her phone rang with a ringtone David had never heard before. There was no name on the screen, so he answered.
Emily, has David agreed to donate his bone marrow?
Even after many years, David recognized John's voice. What did he mean? Bone marrow donation? Me? To whom? Realizing he wasn't responding, John quickly said,
Sorry, wrong number, and hung up.
Watching Emily walk towards John's car, I touched the ring in my pocket and put it back.
Let me treat you to dinner.
Why would you come along? Can you even understand what we're discussing? I'll be back after dinner. Even though we're a couple, please don't follow me around all the time. Instead, think about how you can contribute to society.
With that, Emily got into John's car, which sped away without a moment's pause. I returned home in a daze and spent the night alone in the living room, filled with flowers and balloons, staring at the cake. Emily indeed broke her promise, not for the first time. In those moments of darkness, I missed the old Emily. Emily opened her mouth to explain something but found herself speechless. Dragging my suitcase, I ignored Emily chasing after me and bought a high-speed train ticket home. On the train, I activated my system.
System, I regret it. I want my kidney back.
The host must complete a task to earn points to exchange for wishes.
The task proposed by the system was unreasonable, but I had no other choice. I had to get my kidney back. I returned to the home Emily and I shared. I couldn't move out just yet. Besides, it wasn't me who should move out. When Emily walked in and saw me eating at the dining table, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. Was she afraid I would leave and never come back? She must have discussed things with John on the way back. She approached me without any pretense and stated her purpose.
David, John is also ill and needs someone to save him.
Really? That's good news. What illness? The same as yours? Is that why you targeted me, thinking I'm an easy mark?
I looked at Emily calmly. When anger reaches its peak, it turns into a strange calmness.
David, he's a patient. You shouldn't speak about him like that.
First of all, I have no connection to him, and I didn't say anything bad. Secondly, is his illness my fault? Why should I save him?
David, you're really a cold and heartless person. John is a pillar of society. You have a responsibility to save him. You can't save me just because we're connected and not save him because you're not. That's a lack of social responsibility, and society will condemn you for it.
Emily's self-righteous expression, looking at me with disdain and disgust, was infuriating. In the past, Emily loved to use her so-called sense of social responsibility to force me into doing unnecessary and even absurd things.
I remember when we first started dating, we came home one day to find piles of trash in some deserted corners of the neighborhood. I knew the neighborhood had a cleaning service, so I planned to call the cleaner to handle it. But you picked up a plastic bag and told me to pick up the trash by hand. I was reluctant, and you immediately accused me of lacking responsibility and public spirit. Under your relentless moral accusations, I spent an entire afternoon picking up trash. And you, the world's most socially responsible citizen, spent the afternoon supervising me with your hands behind your back. You even made me check the neighborhood for similar spots for a week, and if I found any, I had to clean them up. If you were at work, you would video call to supervise me. After a week, many people in the neighborhood started pointing fingers at me behind my back. I overheard some of them. They wondered why someone living in such a high-end neighborhood would take over the cleaner's job.
There were many such incidents. I suddenly wondered if Emily made the same demands on John.
John has much more social responsibility than you. He and I contribute to the pharmaceutical industry, which is the epitome of social responsibility.
But Emily, my health is already poor. If I donate bone marrow, have you thought about me?
Hearing these words, Emily finally fell silent for a long time, but what she said next truly showed me the diversity of human nature.
Anyway, it's not going to be fatal. Besides, we need to put life and death aside. As the saying goes, some people are alive, but they are already dead, some people are dead, but they live forever. David, if living has no value, then finding value in other ways is better.
I really thought Emily was unwell, and quite seriously so. Bone marrow transplantation requires matching first. You don't even know if John and I are a match, yet you're eager to promise him. What if we're not a match?
She had undergone a kidney transplant, so she should be aware of these matters.
We'll match, definitely. If you can match with me, you can match with him too.
Seeing that I seemed to be wavering, Emily quickly assured me that we would definitely be a match. In her determined tone, I realized that Emily was far more complex than I had known. Could it be that she secretly got tested without my knowledge? It shouldn't be.
What do you mean?
Back then, my parents and my uncle and aunt couldn't match with me. Only two people could, you and John. I didn't want John to sacrifice so much for me, so I didn't have the surgery with him. Now I'm very grateful, otherwise, how would he have endured it? He wasn't doing well abroad. I deliberately announced our relationship on social media to force him to come back. I shouldn't have done that. If he hadn't come back, he might not have gotten this illness. Fortunately, he also got tested with me back then. Bone marrow transplantation should be similar to kidney transplantation. If the kidney matches, the bone marrow should too.
How ironic. At that time, I thought no one could match with Emily, so I begged the system to change my kidney to match hers, and that's how I saved her. But now Emily tells me that someone could have saved her back then, she just couldn't bear to let them. Moreover, Emily studied this field in college. What evidence does she have to prove that if the kidney matches, the bone marrow will too? I wouldn't doubt Emily's professional ability. I know she's just too concerned about John, so she wants to try every possible way. So, am I supposed to be used? So when I was happily watching Emily announce our relationship, I was just a tool to provoke John into coming back. So when Emily was telling me not to be too sad after her passing and to forget her quickly, she was calculating, making me soften and save her? So, Emily never really loved me. The first time she said she loved me, it was because I was a catalyst for their love. The second time she said she loved me, it was for my kidney. The third time she said she loved me, it was for my bone marrow. Even though she knew that after donating my kidney to her, my health had deteriorated, she still wanted to extract all the value from me. Emily continued to use grand principles to try to make me compromise. Seeing that I was determined not to agree, she played the emotional card.
David, haven't you always wanted to marry me? I promise, if you donate your bone marrow to John, I'll marry you immediately. I'll give you the best medicine, accompany you every day, take care of you. Isn't that enough for you? And if your health really deteriorates in the future, I won't divorce you. I'll always take care of you. You'll also receive praise from everyone in society. Isn't that something many people dream of?
Honestly, I didn't expect Emily to go to such lengths for John. This comparison made my 5 years seem worthless. I pondered for a while, as if making a decision, and nodded.
Okay, I agree.
Go home first. Michael and I haven't eaten yet.
Watching Emily walk towards John's car, I touched the ring in my pocket and put it back. Let me treat you to dinner, I admitted, my tone sounding somewhat humble. I had a feeling that Emily might not come home tonight.
Why would you come along? Can you even understand what we're discussing? I'll be back after dinner. Even though we're a couple, please don't follow me around all the time. Instead, think about how you can contribute to society.
With that, Emily got into John's car, which sped away without a moment's pause. I returned home in a daze and spent the night alone in the living room, filled with flowers and balloons, staring at the cake. Emily indeed broke her promise, not for the first time. In those moments of darkness, I missed the old Emily. David watched Emily walk towards John's car, his hand brushing the ring in his pocket before letting it go.
Let me treat you to dinner. Michael and I haven't eaten yet.
Why would you come along? Can you even understand what we're discussing? I'll be back after dinner. Even though we're a couple, please don't follow me around all the time. Instead, think about how you can contribute to society.
With that, Emily got into John's car, which sped away without a moment's pause. David returned home in a daze, spending the night alone in the living room filled with flowers and balloons, staring at the cake. Emily indeed broke her promise, not for the first time. In those moments of darkness, he missed the old Emily. During this time, I had been consulting with a lawyer. This house was bought by my parents for Emily and me with the intention of marriage. Now that she had been unfaithful, I wondered if I could reclaim the house. The answer was no. Feeling frustrated, the doorbell rang urgently. I opened the door to see a frail Emily, reduced to skin and bones.
David, I don't have much time left. Only now do I realize that you are the one who truly cares for me. I want to spend my remaining days with you.
I was shocked by Emily's audacity. But I still helped her inside.
If you're not well, don't go out. Remember, this house was bought by my parents for you. Of course, you can stay here.
I poured a glass of water for Emily and went upstairs to pack my things. Finally, I came down with my suitcase.
This is your house, but it's not mine. I still can't forgive the hurt you caused me, so I'm moving out. I hope you take care of yourself.
With that, I dragged my suitcase to the door. Emily, despite her frail condition, rushed to stop me.
David, I'm sorry. Truly sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm not well, and this house was bought by your parents. If anyone should leave, it's me. We'll transfer the ownership tomorrow. I just ask you to stay with me for my remaining days.
Reluctantly, I agreed to her plea. I went upstairs to pretend to rearrange my empty suitcase before slowly coming back down. I only agreed to stay with Emily, not to be kind to her, let alone take care of her. Surprisingly, Emily started cooking for me, washing my clothes, and keeping the house spotless. For 5 years, I had been doing these things. I never thought Emily could do them too, but only when it was too late to mend anything. Less than 2 weeks later, Emily was rushed to the hospital. Dr. Smith said it was time to prepare for the inevitable. I entered the ward, and Emily, unable to speak, had tears in her eyes, reaching out to hold my hand. I quickly pulled away.
Emily, weren't you always concerned about your so-called social responsibility? Don't worry, after you're gone, I'll donate your organs. I wonder if your bone marrow could save John. Why didn't you agree to donate your bone marrow to him? You were so adamant back then. I thought you truly had a big heart. That's why I gave you the chance, but you refused. How irresponsible of you. Even if he was just a stranger, you should have saved him.
Emily glared at me with tears in her eyes.
Why are you glaring at me? Aren't these the words you used to persuade me? I'm just repeating them. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you. The kidney I gave you was perfectly fine. I just took it back. So now, I'm healthy, and you're about to pass away. Surprised? If you hadn't tried to take my bone marrow, I wouldn't have taken it back. This is all your own doing.
After saying this, I left the ward. The people waiting outside saw my red eyes and rushed in. Soon, the ward was filled with heart-wrenching cries. I didn't attend Emily's funeral. Instead, I went on a trip. I told everyone that Emily was gone, and I was too heartbroken to face it, so I chose to escape. You see, Emily, even in your passing, I gained a good reputation. Do you regret it? Unfortunately, there's no medicine for regret. I heard that John found a matching bone marrow and quit his job to recuperate at home. Life is a journey, and I am just a traveler. The journey is long, and I need to experience the scenery I once missed.